Hey guys, ancient technology is really cool, right? One of my favorite parts of Skyward Sword is seeing what the technology was like in the ancient past. Vi herself seems like a robot, or at least an AI program. Generally, whenever we see ancient tech in the series, it's always really cool. I cannot blame characters for being so curious about it, wanting to dig it up and play with it, to see what it could really do. Of course, such an act itself could be missing the forest for the trees, perhaps neglecting the reasons why such things were buried to begin with. Such dangers are often excused with optimism for how such technology could be good in the right hands. Unfortunately, such things are not always used constructively, and even the best of intentions can lead to calamity. I'm Cornelius Belmont, and let's talk about how Purah doomed Hyrule. Thanks for joining me. If you want to see similar content like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. Special thank you to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Let's get into it. I should probably start by clarifying that none of Purah's behavior is malicious. She is curious, absorbed into our research, and has been given free rein to play with ancient technology that for so long was marked as forbidden. Likewise, her partner Robbie may have some blame in this too, but of the two scientists, Purah seems to be the one in charge of programming, as to where Robbie seems to be in charge of physical construction, an engineer. As such, the keys to calamity mainly lie in her hands, so I'm focusing on her. First, let's talk about her faults and what led to this. Purah has a brilliant scientific mind. Her diary in Breath of the Wild really captures her spirit. It also states her motives for creating the unaging ruin. More importantly though, it clearly mentions how she created her own Sheikah slate about 10 years after the calamity happened. Eager to get back to work with the technology, she began work on expanding the functionality of the sensor, a process that would take 50 years to complete. We don't know what she was doing on the side, but she and Simon talk about how they generally are waiting for Link to awaken in order to further assist him. As she grew older, she began to work on something entirely new, a reverse aging ruin. Her justification for it was that it could be used on Hyrulean soldiers who had retired, returning them to their prime so they could be in active duty again. However, if you read between the lines, you can see that she had a different source of concern. She was worried that she might not survive for Link to wake up. Or perhaps she was concerned that an elderly Link would show up at Hateno, unable to fight due to his age. She also expressed concern that she may not be able to pass on her work to Link if he doesn't wake up soon. Desperate for results, she used the Beta Rune on herself. This act shows some of her reckless behavior even at age 120, as there are plenty of older people to try this on, even elderly Sheikah. Instead, she was in a hurry to use it on herself, and so in the course of a single night, she reversed her age by 70 years. Over the course of 6 days, her body ended up reverting back to a 6-year-old, which is when she started to work on an aging rune to undo the effects. The point of me recounting this is to show that she is very reckless. Her behavior shows a hunger for scientific advancement. Her lab shows how erratic she is compared to Simon's neat behavior. If we touch on what we see in Age of Calamity, a title that we should take with a heavy grain of salt, given how much it contradicts both Breath of the Wild and itself, we can see how she is all about playing with ancient technology, and in desperate need of a steady hand to help rein her in. As we know, under the Order of the Kingdom, the Sheikah tech was dug up all over Hyrule. 4 divine beasts, and hundreds of guardians were unearthed and repaired. As powerful as they were though, there was something else unearthed as well that shines far more light on the nature of the technology, the Sheikah Towers. In short, these towers have something comparable to our modern day cell phone technology, complete with basic satellite imaging for the land, and the means to teleport objects between towers. Truly, it is a marvel. Though one could wonder what the power source for such technology might be. The topic of the blue energy source and the blue flame is something that I've touched on in a previous video. I will link to it in the description. Beyond those wonders, we know that the Sheikah shrines were built with the same ancient technology. The Master Cycle itself showcases this as well, not to mention ancient armor, weapons, and mounting for horses that have been developed presumably to use the tower network. So the question becomes, were the Sheikah advancing their technology too much in the ancient time? Certainly the royal family thought so. After the calamity was sealed, the Sheikah were ordered to disband their technology, bury it, and live peaceful traditional lives. This of course led to the creation of the Yiga clan, who felt insulted by being told to step away after everything they had done to save the land. One might wonder why the Yiga are not using ancient technology themselves, but that could be because their most recent leadership in the last 120 years or so is a complete idiot. Whatever the case, it is clear that the power amassed by the ancient technology was great. Yet still, they likely wanted to build more. The royal family perhaps grew worried that such technology might even challenge the gods themselves. Yet there were those of the Sheikah who desired to continue the advancement. Purah and Robbie may just be the modern incarnations of that obsession. They are inventors, they tinker, and most importantly, they create. They were given free rein to do whatever they wanted with the technology as long as that robot army was ready to fight. With them in charge, mainly Purah with the programming of the Guardians, one might question if she put safeguards in place just in case something went wrong. That brings me to... Allow me to break away from the lore for just a moment to bring up problems with technology from our modern world. In the summer of 2021, hackers took remote control of the Colonial Pipeline. This caused a huge crisis on the East Coast, causing gas prices to spike due to the sudden shortage, which greatly affected countless people. By holding the pipeline ransom, the hackers were able to get away with their demands of $5 million. Likewise, there are all types of schemes out there in society where criminals infiltrate a personal account, then lock that person out, preventing them from being able to access their email, their banks, even their phones, and then ransom it all for money. The more complicated the system, the more possible the means of corruption and infiltration there are. You can probably see where I'm going with this. The Sheikah, with Purah and Robbie at the head, unearthed countless machines more destructive than anything the face of Hyrule had ever seen. In doing so, they brought about the biggest threat the kingdom had ever faced, their very own weapons. You know what happened next. The calamity emerged and immediately started taking control of those weapons, and then used them against the very kingdom they were intended to protect. Here is the thing that we should be asking. What safeguards were in place to prevent this? There are things to consider here. The first of which being how the calamity was able to take over the machines to begin with. A burst of malice shot out from the castle at the time of the eruption. That malice infiltrated the machines. In the case of the Guardians, their AI was overwhelmed and taken control of. While in the case of the Divine Beast, their pilots were killed and replaced with pieces of the calamity itself, the Blight Cannons. So why am I laying the blame for this on Purah, you might ask? Well, the attacker is always the one at fault, and I fully admit that Purah is just a victim in this regard. It's her negligence that is in question. Quite simply, she should have at least seen this as a possibility and planned for something in case of sabotage. You see, the Sheikah have a dangerous enemy, the Yiga clan. It is my belief that the Yiga clan had infiltrated the Sheikah scientist, and from that learned of the vulnerabilities, leaking it back to the man himself, the one behind the calamity, Ganondorf. What could Purah have done differently? Instead of being so focused on the technology itself, she could have been putting safeguards in to prevent the backdoor that the Yiga were able to create. Purah could have also installed safeguards in order to shut the machines down, or even cause them to self-destruct if they went out of control. After all, we know of at least one situation in which a Guardian went berserk, and shot a beam at Princess Zelda, causing a young soldier Link to come to her defense. Furthermore, for her to behave as though the Yiga wouldn't get involved with their work, who I might remind you are Masters of Disguise and Sheikah themselves, was just about the biggest blunder she could possibly make. To be clear, the fault of the destruction of Hyrule lies in the hands of the Calamity. However, it cannot be understated that it was the weapons that Purah and Robbie had brought back which allowed for that destruction in the first place. We all know what happened afterward. Our hero came back, killed the Blights, fought back the darkness, and gave an opening to Zelda so she could obliterate the malice using her sealing powers. As we see in the post-game credit sequence, the technology seems to be running out of power, or at least going quiet. With the late king having died, and the princess very much interested in science, one might question where Hyrule would go from here with the use of technology. I would think even with her interest in it would end up being suppressed again. The trailer to Tears of the Kingdom does not show any Sheikah shrines or towers on the overworld. Perhaps they ran out of power, or they were tucked away for whatever reason. We will find out in May. If we look at the history of Hyrule, we can see that it has always been technologically stunted, with only a few times of truly advanced technology coming along. The Sheikah were told to abandon their technology, and one might even wonder if in the very ancient past before the time of Skyward Sword, if their technology was in play to create the building blocks of the land. We simply don't know. But what we do know is that some of the inspiration for Breath of the Wild comes from Studio Ghibli films. Films such as Princess Mononoke, stories that show a balance with nature being the ideal state, and not trying to overwhelm and control it with our technology and urbanization. Plus, in the most recent entries, the Zelda series has been giving off a lot of Shinto vibes, which always includes living in balance with nature. It is my belief that moving forward, Hyrule would rebuild once again, clinging to the traditional values and not attempting to use technology to enrich their lives. I could be wrong. As for Purah, if she doesn't get her science privileges revoked, I could see her wanting to do much good for the kingdom with her technology. If she does, hopefully she has learned to be more careful. It would be tragic if that aging room she invented was used to turn Hyrule soldiers into something like Redead's Stalfos or maybe even Iron Knuckles. Anyhow, those were my thoughts on the situation. Now, I want to know yours. Do you think that Purah and Robbie carry some blame for the destruction of Hyrule? I'm actually a bit conflicted on this topic, and I'm really looking forward to reading your comments on it. Regardless, thank you for watching. Have a good day.